everyone. Welcome to the Yacht Talk podcast. Today I'm here with Danielle Butler from the Luxury Law Group. How are you, Danielle?
I'm great. How are you this morning?
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for the invitation to participate.
Thank you. So, Danielle, tell us a little bit more about yourself, please, and what does the Luxury Law Group offer to people in general and specifically to yacht owners?
Sure, I'd be happy to explain what it is that we do. So I'm a practicing attorney for 19 years, and I started Luxury Law Group with a partner of mine, Andrew High, in 2014. Prior to that, we were both maritime attorneys at law firms, and we just decided to go on our own. We were both from entrepreneurial backgrounds and just felt that it was time to do that. And because we were focusing our practices on maritime law and dealing with people, helping them buy, sell, own, and construct yachts, we realized that at that point, the yacht was the last part of their accumulation of luxury assets. So by the time they went to buy the yacht, they already had the jet, they had the houses, they had the art, and the jewels, the wine collections, all of it. So what we realized is that luxury is luxury. A transaction, of course, is the same legal procedure. It's usually just the asset that makes the difference. And so we expanded our practice and the law firm from just maritime only to deal with all luxury assets. So we found a nice name, Luxury Law Group, which explains what we deal with here. And so what we did is we divided the law firm into departments based on the asset versus the practice group. So we have a vessel department, we have a jet department, we have a real estate department, and then we have all other fine antiquities. And we have a partner in place that manages each department. Myself and Andrew primarily do maritime work, so dealing with the purchase, sale, transactions and litigations concerning yachts. I also do jet transactions, and Andrew also does more general business transactions for people in those particular industries. So we don't do general corporate work, but we do corporate work for people within the maritime industry, within the jet industry, within the real estate industry, because we like to support our industry, not just the owners that
Okay, interesting.
are buying and selling the assets.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So, my next question. Why would a yacht owner want to have a maritime attorney?
Okay, I'm going to start off with my very typical introduction whenever I get referred a client, and it's our initial consultation, and they ask me, why should I have a maritime attorney? I say, okay, tell me about your last real estate transaction. And they'll say, oh, I bought this house for, and it's usually anywhere between $1 million and $5 million, right? I said, did you have an attorney on that transaction? And they said, yes, of course, most indefinitely. I said, okay, so now let's parlay that to the yacht. The house doesn't move, and the house normally doesn't have a crew involved in it. Maybe you have a housekeeper that comes every day, but they don't sleep there. So now, take this $5 million yacht purchase that you have. So the boat floats, the boat travels, the boat normally has anywhere from 2 to 5 crew members on it. Then you're also going to most likely rent out that boat for third parties to use it. So you see the minimal real estate legal issues that could come up with real estate. Now I just opened up a whole can of worms with a boat transaction. I said you would normally never even consider doing any other purchase or transaction between $1 to $5 million, no matter what it is, even purchasing a company, purchasing stocks without an attorney. So why treat this any differently, except in your mind it's a toy. To me, it's not a toy, it's a libelous asset that you have third parties sleeping on, right? That a multitude of things normally happen during a yacht ownership. So protect yourself now by purchasing it a specific way, owning it a specific way. Not only that, So I say to them, normally, by the time you come to me, you already have all your other assets. You have the jet, you have the houses, and I guarantee you probably have some sophisticated estate planning set up to protect all of your assets, all of your wealth, and then of course yourselves. Buying the yacht and putting it in your personal name just overturned your estate planning, because you just exposed yourself by putting your name as the owner of this yacht.
Oh.
Just like any other asset, I guarantee you your jet is not owned
Your name.
by
Yeah.
yourself personally. I bet you your fleet of cars aren't owned in your name personally. So why would you do the same with a yacht? So what I try and not spoil the romance of buying a yacht. We always keep the happiness intact, but I just try and reach their business sense to protect them on the long run, and understanding that let's just do the work now initially to protect you and to set you up correctly, legally correctly, that works hand in hand with your estate planning, then go off and have your fun. And that's what we do. That's our job. Our job is to protect our clients on whatever it is that they're doing.
Yes.
So in this case, it's usually buying, constructing, chartering, selling, and then of course, the most issues we see aren't from the buying and the selling. It's the ownership of it. It's that 2 to 5 years that they actually own the vessel, that the most legal issues come up. Either crew hiring and firing, unfortunately, groundings, collisions, bringing it to the yard and having either a contractor, the yard, or a subcontractor overbill them or not do work to the quality of standard they expected. There's a very unique tool only in the maritime industry where a vessel can be arrested and seized. I guess the layman's terms would be seized by the federal government for the unpaid debts concerning that vessel.
Wow.
So there's no tool to arrest a jet, there's no tool to arrest a piece of property and take everyone off and not allow that property to be utilized, but there is for a boat.
Wow.
So you have to understand that yes, this is for fun, but still understand the liability that you're getting into, so then we can minimize those issues and truly have fun. And then of course, we're in the same industry, our ultimate goal is to keep people in boats.
Yeah.
Not allow them to have those experiences that they get fed up, they sell the boat, and now they're gonna go and buy a timeshare, right?
Yeah.
We want them on the water.
And to feel safe doing so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
They have their family on the
Yes.
vessel. They have their closest people in their lives that they love so much. Safety is our utmost concern.
Yes, and peace of mind.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you for that very
Oh, you're welcome.
useful information. So, in which cases could a yacht owner be held legally responsible?
Okay, so taking what we just talked about. So if Mr. John Smith, right, buys a yacht, puts it in his name personally, anything concerning that yacht and his ownership, now he will be held personally responsible. So anyone gets injured on the boat, anybody gets injured because of the boat, any property damage that happens either with or because of the boat, any sort of debts that are incurred because of the boat that are rendered unpaid, all of that would be the responsibility of John Smith.
Wow.
Now, if John Smith has it in a company, we're not trying to eradicate his responsibility as a vessel owner to do what's right. What we're trying to do is just protect him personally, put the vessel in a company where now it's the company that's liable. The way that you would be able to circumvent that company is that if the shareholders, in this case we're just going to go with Mr. Smith, ran the company or used the company for something that was outside the scope of why the company was formed. In our case, we're forming the company for the ownership, maintenance, and navigation of a vessel.
Mhm.
So if he decides to use the vessel for illegal means outside of those scopes, then yes, the law allows you to circumvent the company and go after Mr. Smith. In my experience, I have yet to see where they can circumvent the company because my clients aren't doing that. They're buying the yacht in order
Yeah.
to use it for fun and for relaxation and for vacating their busy lifestyles.
Yeah.
So the exposure really exists on how you first own the vessel, right?
Mhm.
Then during the ownership, regardless now, let's just talk about what sort of issues can they expect to run into. Now during a transaction, if you're a buyer, I think the things that you could expect to run into is, and these are the typical things that we usually see in a transaction is, so you're a yacht broker, you write up the purchase and sale agreement. There's deadlines in that. So the first thing would be if there's anything within that agreement that isn't honored by both parties, we have a conflict, we have a dispute. But some of the things that we see arise in that usually are concerning either the lack of inventory that's associated with a vessel.
Okay.
So for example, you bring Mr. Smith onto the vessel, right? And he's looking around the vessel and he sees a Vincent Van Gogh.
Mhm.
But on the offer or on the inventory list that's listed on the MLS, maybe that Van Gogh is not listed on there, or it is listed on there, but the seller specifically meant to have it excluded.
Oh.
But that never actually gets memorialized.
Mm.
So now that buyer is thinking that Van Gogh is part of the yacht transaction because it's on the yacht as he sees it, right? He does his personal inspection. We get to the closing table, he sits down, he notices that the Van Gogh is gone,
Mhm.
and of course the seller's like, why would you ever think that was part of the yacht purchase? So the clarity of understanding for the buyer what is included in the purchase price and what isn't is incredibly important.
Yes.
Same thing is we know that most of these yachts have tons of toys.
Mhm.
They have scuba equipment, they have jet skis, they have parasails on them, they have maybe one or two tenders,
Mhm.
sometimes a tow behind vessel. So you can't just assume that the buyer is going to understand that maybe all or none of these what we call auxiliary vessels are going to be included in the transaction, right?
Mhm.
So in writing and clarifying that with a very detailed inventory list and a very detailed exclusion list, not just all seller's personal items.
Yeah.
Maybe the seller thinks that Van Gogh is a personal item.
Yeah.
The buyer isn't. It's not a piece of clothing. It's not a toothbrush. It's not a razor. You know what I mean? So clarity is what usually resolves getting to the closing without any issues. The other area where we normally see some conflict is during the survey and see trial. Most normally in this day and age, we get through the survey and see trial with a list, a laundry list of items of what's wrong with the vessel,
Yeah.
right? And I always tell my clients and also my brokers that refer me business and that we work together on the transactional closing is don't put together a laundry list and allocate the seller to repair those lists before closing. Because usually the expectation that one gets done on time and two gets done to the degree and to the standard that the buyer wants is going to be different. Because
Yes.
the buyer wants everything to be done perfectly, the seller just wants to spend as little as possible to get the boat sold.
Yes, I understand.
So what I tell them is just agree on a reduced amount of the purchase price and let the buyer take care of those items after the fact. So those are the two transactional issues that we most commonly see. During the ownership, again, it's usually crew. Either they interview crew comes on board, but there's having crew on board your personal space is very similar to a intimate relationship. Now there's, of course, I'm not saying that there's any funny business going on, but they're in your space.
Mhm.
They're in your personal space. So you have to have a chemistry with that person. You have to be able to tolerate their personalities, vice versa, or else you're gonna have issues. And the number one reason why people sell boats is because of your relationship with the crew.
Yeah.
So hiring the crew is one of the most important things that you could do after you own the vessel. The other than very litigious issue, you know, besides from the things that I can't prevent legally, would be bringing the vessel to a yard, right? And then what sort of agreements, whether they're verbal or they're in writing, that you put in place with people that are then gonna do the work on the vessel. That's where I always see it. There's always a difference in the expectations of what work's going to be done and to what standards, and always a difference in the expectation of the cost. So clients should always request an estimate. Now, an estimate is an estimate, it's not firm, but it's a ballpark. But if you get an estimate based on a written list of the things that you want done, and then at the end of the work, that estimate or the final bill is 3 times the amount of what the estimate was, and you have not added anything additional to that. And that's usually the rub there though. Because I always get the client, it's 3 times of what they told me it was going to be. And I'm like, well, did you add any work? I didn't, but did your captain add any work? And it's very simple. It's nothing that happens purposefully, but I'm the captain of the vessel, you're the contractor, you come up to me and say, okay, the job to redo the masthead has these issues that we didn't expect when we made the estimate, or we didn't expect when you signed the contract. But now we need to do this, this, and this. Now normally, it's a very innocent conversation. The captain says, okay, I understand that, so go ahead and do those things. This, and this have a dollar amount next to it that is in addition to the estimate. So again, like anything else, you know, you have work done on your house, and how you manage that work should parlay over to what you do on your vessel. But unfortunately, the owners of these vessels, again, it's fun. It's supposed to be an asset in which you have fun. The minute it becomes a headache, they're more prone to sell the vessel and not buy another one. So there's this management, there's a tricky dichotomy of managing the client's expectations, of making sure that this is a fun asset to own and manage, and then our job of making sure that everything stays legally sound, and when it isn't, to try and mitigate the circumstance so we're not finding our owner in a 2-year ugly embroiled lawsuit where, you know, all the fees and all the time requirement in order to get through it is something that makes them then sell the yacht and never buy a boat again.
Yes, and talk to their friends about their bad experience, which just
Right.
Right?
Exactly. I mean, unfortunately, and I hate this pun that's out there, but you know, what's the best day
of
you know
when they say like
they buy it and when they sell it. I don't believe that. I own a boat. I love my boat.
Yeah.
It's expensive to own a boat. Yeah, you have to understand it's an asset sitting in salt, right? You have to take care of it.
The experiences and the memories you create are priceless.
Amazing. I agree. Yep.
Okay, very nice. So, okay, so you talked a little bit about crew. I would like to know how you guys can help yacht owners when they hire crew. Like specifically, have you had cases in which you have helped them against lawsuits, or what kind of problems have you found that the yacht owners encounter with crew?
So when it comes to crew, the first thing we always tell our yacht owners is to have some sort of agreement, even if it's the basic business terms of who, what, when, where, why, on a piece of paper, agreed to by both parties, signed by the yacht owner and the crew, whatever position it is that they're gonna take on the boat. That eliminates well more than 50% of the problems that we see with crew, which is they either leave or they get fired, and upon that point, they say something is owed to them. And that's all they have to claim, is that something is owed to them. And if it's not paid, then again, they could utilize that maritime arrest tool
Oh,
to have the vessel seized.
wow.
So if you have it in writing and they come up to you and say, well, I'm owed 4 weeks vacation, you could then consult your contract, your written contract that was signed by both parties and say, according to the contract, this is what you've accrued and this is what you'll get paid. If you don't have that, then you're in the very typical scenario of he said, she said. And you have to prove your case by testimony, by whatever you might have in writing. Nowadays we're such a written community when it comes to text messaging, emailing, but nothing's ever better than a single piece of paper signed by both parties on what they agree to. What is their position? What are they going to get paid? Will health care be paid for them or not? What's their vacation? How does that accrue? Those very basic things. If the person, if the crew member is on the yacht and they boarded here in Fort Lauderdale, but now let's just say they're in Mexico and they're terminated, the understanding on, and of course the legal responsibility to repatriate that crew member back to where they boarded or where they're a citizen of, versus just kicking the crew off in Mexico and sailing off, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that.
No, of course.
So, of course, you can do that anywhere else in the world. You have a house in Montana and you've got people flown in to manage the house and you fire them, you escort them off the property, and that's your legal requirement, right? On a boat, that's not the case.
Yeah, because you transported them, right? Of course. Interesting. Let's see what else we have.
Now, let's go back though, with the crew.
Yeah.
When it comes to their injuries on the boat and sicknesses that they develop while they're a crew member, there is a maritime standard in law that the owner is responsible for their maintenance incur, meaning their medical costs and helping them resolve whatever either the injury is or whatever the illness is, until that person is what we call cured.
Yeah.
And there's a mathematical equation on how you figure that out. There's law standards on what cure actually means. But again, if someone is on the boat, trips and breaks their leg, you can't then just escort them off the boat and sail away. You have a responsibility to that individual.
Yeah.
That is another area. I'd say the other 50% of crew claims would be that. How an owner actually deals with that circumstance or that situation when it occurs.
Okay. And also, it's a different subject, but I guess insurance would cover some of those costs.
Right, so another very important part of the closing process is obtaining insurance. Now, do they need insurance? If they are not financing the vessel where they have a lender to protect, then no, just like your home. If you paid cash for your home, you don't necessarily, there's no legal requirement to have insurance. Same thing here. Now, would I think that they're insane if they didn't get insurance? Absolutely, because of the numerous things that could happen. Again, so with insurance in place, if something happens, that's what insurance is for. It's the pot of money to deal with that, right?
Yes.
Versus not having insurance, the pot of money now is your bank account. So yes, insurance is very important. And in that insurance, you want to have your hull covered. You want to have all the auxiliary vessels covered and listed on that policy. You want to have captain and crew coverage on that policy for their acts, because they are, if you have a corporation or a company that owns the vessel, again, they are employees underneath the law. So their acts, you want to have insurance over their act, just like directors and officer insurance when you have a company to protect concerning their acts. You want to say the same thing with captain and crew.
Yes.
So that's really the basic coverage. The other coverage, which are more addendums, would be if you are going to be in hurricane areas during that season, there's an addendum and a policy, or an increase in the premium to have that. If you're gonna dive off a vessel, very risky. So there's a separate addendum and increase in premium for that activity. It's not part of your standard policy.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nice. So, next question about chartering. When someone is chartering their yacht to a third party, what are a few things they should be legally prepared for?
Okay, so this is a whole nother can of worms, but it's something that we're seeing more and more with owners trying to defer costs. You'll never make money on chartering. Okay, so that's the first misnomer, right?
Yes.
You know that, you're an experienced yacht broker. Why people charter is to defer that 10 to 15% of the yearly budget that they're gonna need to maintain the vessel. So you're deferring costs. And a boat needs to be used. So if you're the type of owner that's only gonna use her maybe a month out of the year, that other time chartering makes sense because the boat is actually being used. Those engines and those systems need to be ran. So what chartering does is allows that all to happen. I always recommend that they have a charter manager taking care of the vessel and the vessel's interests during that, let's use layman's terms, rental period, right?
Okay,
We call it charter, but during a rental period. And then making sure that if you are looking to charter, that you have an experienced charter broker trying to match you with the right vessel, and as important, the right crew to help you throughout your vacation. So that's the first thing. And then of course, with a charter, making sure it's in writing, making sure you do a pre-inspection of the vessel to make sure it's to your liking. Now your charter broker can do that for you, but if you are a particular person, then you do it yourself, right? During that, I mean, chartering has probably more litigious issues to it than our experience with buying and selling yachts. And I think it's because the expectations are so high because of the abnormality of the opportunity of being on a private boat for 1 week in some exclusive location, and for the money that you pay for it. A charter's expectations is way up there, right? Now, if the owner is used to chartering, not to say that they're not going to provide that experience, but normally their expectations aren't where the charterers are. So that leaves all of this room in flux, right? Do all of the electronics on the vessel work? Do all of the auxiliary vessels that were on the list that made them decide to take that yacht? Are they all operable? Are they all filled up with gas, right? Are the lists of food and alcohol that they required on the boat? Is there someone on the boat that's going to be able to prepare that stuff for them? You know, what's the experience that they have with the captain? Now, of course, there's a whole litany of things that no one has control under, and that's listed in the charter agreement under force majeure, right? If there's strikes, if there's riots, if there's war, if there's inclement weather, you know, if there is breakdown of the asset of the vessel that has nothing to do with the owner's lack of maintenance on the vessel, because mechanics break down, right?
Yeah, I know.
Sometimes outside of the fault of anyone. So that's all stuff that is under a force majeure clause. And I think that understanding that clause is very important because it's a huge tool to get out of blame on either side. So chartering is amazing. It's a huge part of our industry. It's a great tool to introduce people to boating because we do see that a lot of our charterers end up becoming yacht owners and then charter their vessels out, right? So I think it's an amazing tool for our industry in order to introduce people to boating, and then normally they end up becoming yacht owners themselves. But it's a great way for owners to defer costs, but it's using the right people and understanding the legalness of what you're doing, right? Because again, it's not like renting the house, but the house doesn't move.
Mm-hmm.
And normally, again, the house has no people on it
Yes.
or in it.
Yes. Yes.
So we see a lot of chartering. We deal with a lot of chartering. I happen to be an attorney that focuses a lot on chartering, so I get called by people within our industry, charter managers and charter brokers all the time, asking me, can you either, like for a charter manager, they'll call me and they say, I have this owner and they have this yacht. It's owned this way, it's flagged this way, they want to charter here, and this is how much they want to charter. Can you look at all that and tell me, are they legally allowed to? And if they are, where can't they, and what can they and what can't they do?
Okay.
And that's genius. I love charter managers that are proactive that way. It's not a lot of money to make sure that you're legally sound in order to do that, because the last thing you want is to charter out your boat, have charter guests on the boat, be pulled over for whatever reason, because just like the cops, that's what Marine Patrol and Coast Guard could do, and have them shut it down because the charter isn't legal.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then with charterers or charter brokers, we get called on the same. Can you take a look at this boat and make sure that we're not going to have any issues because maybe it's not charter ready or charter legal, like we say.
Okay.
So I do deal with that a lot with both yachts and jets, aside from assisting people from buying and selling and constructing, but the actual other half of our industry, which is the chartering.
Interesting. Great. Okay. Now, next question. How can a maritime attorney help people who are sharing the ownership of a yacht?
Okay. That is could be a very litigious part of yacht ownership if not done correctly from the beginning. And what I say is, we want to buy a boat together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because let's just say I don't have $1 million to afford to buy on my own. We're going to go 50-50. We're going to put Miriam and Danielle. That's going to be the owners of the boat.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wrong way of doing it, because now we're both personally liable, right?
Yes.
And there's no piece of paper laying out what Danielle, what Miriam is responsible for, how much usage does Danielle get and when, how much usage does Miriam get and when. So again, it's all about how you structure it. So joint ownership, fractional ownership, joint usage, whatever term of art you want to call it, the foundation is the most important, and that is figuring out how many people want to be part of the transaction. Let's just say there's going to be 3. You form a company, each person is a shareholder of the company. You draft an operating agreement for the management of the company, the legalities of the company, and then separately, you draft up a usage agreement for the boat. And those are your rules of the road on the who, what, when, where, why of the usage and maintenance, and God forbid, damage concerning the vessel. This second piece of paper, this usage agreement, is what I normally see to be the issue that ends not only the ownership, but then the friendships.
Yeah.
Because I'm just not going to pull Joe Smith off the street to buy a boat. It's Miriam, my best friend, you know.
So trust.
Right, so it's not just boat ownership that could go bad, it's relationships that could go bad. So it's not that it's prohibited, it's just to make sure that you have someone, and I'm not just saying a maritime attorney, but a broker, an accountant, that's going to help you structure the transaction up front correctly, so then the future issues that I could see going wrong are covered. Now, not everything is always covered, right? There's stuff happens, but at least the majority of things, you could always go back to that piece of paper that you all agreed on and everybody signed off on.
Yes, and having someone with the experience that has seen things go wrong in the past with other people in the same scenario, right? That can
Helps
advise
tremendously.
you what to be prepared for.
Right. I have to be honest with you, I get a lot of yacht owners that call me and they say, you know what, I'm going to start a fractional ownership program. Have you ever heard of that? Has anybody ever done it? And I'm like, you know, you want to be delicate with with not insulting the fact that they came up with a business idea, but yes, it's been done, it's been tried, tested. There's many companies that are out there that do it. It's not as easy as you think it's going to be. It's not that you go out and buy 5 boats and start chartering them out, right? So there's a delicate dance there, but if done properly, I think that it can be a successful venture. There's also, so besides the maritime attorney, the accountant, and the yacht broker to get you into the transaction, then after that, I always recommend that you have a fractional ownership manager or a yacht manager taking care of that asset. So now it's not the responsibility of any one of the shareholders, because if something goes wrong and it was my turn to look over the yacht, then you're going to be upset because I didn't do what I was supposed to do, but maybe my day job actually has me busy. There's always an excuse.
Life.
You have a yacht manager that you pay to look over the well-being of the yacht, and that also clarifies any of that. It was your fault, it was my fault. You said you were going to do this, I didn't do this.
That's great advice. Okay.
Tried and tested.
Yeah, hopefully one day. So now the last question. Can you tell us any stories of clients who have needed your help in uncommon situations?
I don't know if I necessarily have uncommon. They're common to our industry, but maybe not common to someone that doesn't have a boat, right? That doesn't own a vessel. There's always situations like, for example, in transactions, we talked about the Van Gogh. That is a very typical fail stop that happens in a transaction, meaning that there's normally a buyer that goes onto a boat and sees something, and we never know what it is, right? You don't know what's the eye. What is it? Art is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
Maybe it's flatware. Maybe it's a ship's bell. Maybe it's a piece of art or linens or something like that. So you don't get that in a house purchase or a jet purchase. You get that in a yacht because, again, a yacht is an extension of your home. That's how most people look at it.
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon for us to see issues like that, but I think it would be uncommon for someone that isn't in our industry to understand that a transaction could actually default because at the closing table somebody took off flatware or somebody took off a ship's bow.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So we see that. Other issues that we see, of course, are having a little bit too much fun on the boat, maybe too liquored up or too something, and the owner gets the crew to do things that normally they would never do. But there's that relationship, right?
Yeah.
Maybe and captains and owners all the time form social relationships. You've had too much to drink, now you're telling your captain you want to do this, where normally your captain would absolutely not say that. He'd say, no, Mr. Smith, we can't do that. The boat can't go there, or it's not safe, or you shouldn't get on the Sea-Doo or the jet ski in this condition, right? But he's your boss. And you say no, you know what happens when you say no to someone in that position.
You lose your job.
You lose your job, right? So sometimes it's that decision of, do I lose my job or do I just let it happen? And then when they say why, you say, you're the boss. So we see those sorts of situations, not a lot, but they do happen. But otherwise, it's an amazing experience. Boating is a vacating of your life. It's privacy. You can do it somewhere. You could go to places that no one else could go to, right? Yeah. The only way you could get there is a plane, and sometimes not. It's a deserted island, but you can only get there by a boat. So I feel very blessed in what I do. I enjoy it very much.
Thank you so much, Danielle.
You're welcome.
This has been amazing. I'm sure all the advice that you're giving will help our listeners,
I hope it does. I'm happy.
Either if they will hire an attorney or not, at least we're giving people a general,
bigger
feel.
picture.
Yes.
I just want them to go in with their eyes open.
Yes.
I don't want to scare them. That's not the point at all. But just be happy, but still go in with your eyes open. Right?
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.